Hello, hello, hello. It's Tony here from Locks to Who, and today I'm talking about Doctor Who and the Daleks, the 1965 film starring Peter Cushing as Doctor Who. That is actually his name in the film. Um, I wanted to do it here. It's not. It wasn't actually released until 1965, but I wanted to do it here because I wanted to do it while the my memories of the original Daleks TV series were still sort of vaguely in my head. Um, so, um, after the Daleks, for a short while, there was such a thing as Dalek mania, um, and Daleks were a big enough thing that a producer, Milton Subotsky, decided that a film would be worthwhile. Now, I assume just because of availability, they decided not to use the cast, the actual BBC cast, to do it, and so they chose a completely different cast. One of whom, playing the Doctor, is Peter Cushing, um, and then Jenny Linden plays Barbara, or Barbara Who, as she should be known. Um, oh God, why have I forgotten her name? Roy Castle plays Ian, who is Barbara's want-to-be boyfriend, and Rebecca Tovey plays Susan. Now, in this, Susan is an actual child, so she's sort of 8, 9, 10, and Rebecca Tovey actually does a pretty good job. Often child actors are terrible, and people are usually very kind about them, but Rebecca Tovey is actually excellent. And she plays a very bright. There is one moment where I just think, oh, you're being the character's being annoying, which is when they find the drugs from the Thars left outside the TARDIS, and everybody's being very cautious about it, and then she runs up and picks it up like it does, and I'm thinking that could be a mine. You don't just run up to stuff on an alien planet randomly and just pick it up. But that's my only. That's more about the character than the performance. Um, what Milton Spotsky's obviously done here. It's directed by Gordon Fleming, and actually I think it's pretty well directed with a couple of little exceptions. What they've decided to do here, though, is make this more obviously child friendly than the original TV series. Now, although Doctor Who is, as people constantly like to remind me, considered to be something of a children's program, it rarely looks down on children, and what it makes is aimed has a sort of family appeal and isn't like, oh, googly little children, let's do something for little children. This is more little children aimed at children. Rebecca Tovey casting being one thing that seems that Cushing's performance as the Doctor, as Doctor Who, um, is also very child friendly. I think I'm sure I read somewhere that Peter Cushing liked playing Doctor Who because it was unusual for him, and it was a part in a film that was aimed at children and not a horror film. Um, I know it's kind of sacrilege, but I don't think It's not one of Peter Cushing's best performances. I think it's very um, art. It's very. I'm going to say like it's a silent movie performance. Um, the old man walk. I mean, he isn't actually that old, Peter Cushing, when he plays this part. The old man walk, the really obvious winks. Um, but that doesn't stop it being entertaining. The one thing about this film is it is entertaining. I don't think it's particularly great. I think of the two films, and I'll talk about Dalek Invasion of Earth 2150 AD. Of the two films, I think the TV version of this story is better than the film version, whereas with the Dalek Invasion of Earth, I think the film version is better than the TV version. Now that'll become something probably considered to be sacrilege at some point. Anyway, it's basically the same plot as the Daleks, but they cut out loads of it um, to make it fit the film running time. It's about an hour and a half long, I think, maybe an hour and 20 something minutes. It flies by, whereas obviously the original TV series is 7 25-minute episodes. Um, It's also played much more broadly for comedy, pretty much from the offing. Roy Castle's performed. Roy Castle does a lot of pratfalling. Um, and Ian is rarely taken that seriously. He gets a lot of comedy. He's very good though. I mean, Roy Castle. I have a significant soft spot for Roy Castle. I'm going to do a little very dull personal anecdote here. I used to have when I lived in Gerrards Cross as a sort of early teenager, sort of 12 to 14. I had a paper round in Gerrards Cross, and every morning, rain or shine, I'd obviously be out on my bike delivering papers. And a lot of mornings I would pass Roy Castle doing his morning jog, and he never failed to say hello, how are you? Are you right? As we were passing each other, and I always thought he seemed very such a really nice person. So I've always held Roy Castle in high regard as a result of that. And he's good in this. He isn't playing it. He is playing the comedy part. Everybody else is there's some comedy for everybody from all the main cast, but he's the big sort of pratfalling idiot fundamentally. Although he does it's him that saves the day at the end, pretty much. The Thals in this are much more fey. Look at they've got eye makeup. They've got they have golden and silver hair. There are a lot more of them than there are in the TV series. In fact, they obviously the biggest, apart from the casting and the way it's played, the biggest difference between the film and the TV series is it's in colour. So in 1965, this is the first time you see any kind of form of Doctor Who in colour, which they make a big deal about in the trailers. But it's also the scale of it. There's a lot more Daleks. There's a lot more Thals. All the sets are on a bigger scale. The forest, the petrified forest, the Dalek city. It's roughly a similar-ish design. Or actually, and I'm going to say this, although the Dalek city is on a bigger scale, there's a few bits of it that I think look much less interesting than the TV series. The TV series city. The doors are obviously are small, but they're meant to be small because they're made for Daleks. In this story, that everything is much bigger, and it looks because it's much bigger. It looks like it's not been made for Daleks. There are the Daleks made for the film were made specifically for film. They're not the same Daleks, so they're slightly different design. There is a website. There are people that can go into this in much more technical detail than I can. And actually, some of the Daleks were then recycled later on into the TV series. But yeah, colour. Also, the Dalek extermination effect is not the sort of positive to negative. It's fire extinguisher steam. There's also a couple of petty little things that just annoy me. The fact that the Dalek alarm is a bell seems a bit silly. Surely somebody could create a very weird noise to make the alarm sound. But pretty much most of it's played. And actually, the other thing that, in terms of the one thing I think the film also does better than the TV series is when Barbara, Ian, I can't remember who the two Thals are exploring, following the pipes into the city. The pipes are visible, and the area around it is Dalek sized. And what the TV series seems to ignore is the fact that this pipeline had to be put in by Daleks, and and it's tiny and it's impossible to navigate. And how will the Daleks get in and out? Basically, is the difference. And the film does that much better, in my opinion. They cut down the whole traveling through the swamp over the mountains because they cut down the timeline completely. So the Daleks when they decide to explode the neutron bomb, they decided to do it immediately, and therefore instead of taking days to cross the swamp to climb the mountains to get in through the pipeline, they have to do it in like an hour. Which actually, although it's supposed to increase the stakes and compress the timeline, it actually just seems ridiculous because it's clear that. And they also make the fatal mistake of doing a countdown towards the end, which is clearly so out of whack with the time that is actually taking place that it kind of it's a silly thing to say. You didn't need you might have wanted to put the countdown in right at the end, but throwing in it's going to be we're going to do it immediately and it's going to be ready in an hour. It just makes the whole exploring through the swamp, coming over the mountains, seem silly. They do with the city make it seem more compact. It's not like you have to go it's all everything is immediately around the city in a way that perhaps it isn't in the TV series. The distances are all compressed as well as the timeline. So it's hard to look at this from a 2025 point of view, because I imagine in 1965, if you were a kid, this would have been fantastic as a way to watch Doctor Who. If you really like Doctor Who, it's colour, it's big scale, but it isn't very. But it is more aimed at kids than the TV series is in reality. In fact, if somebody ever says to you, "Oh, I don't know why you like Doctor Who, it's a kids TV series," you could say to them, "Well, you might be right, but there are kids series and there are kids series, and if you want to compare and contrast, watch the last two episodes of the Daleks TV series and watch the Dalek movie, and one is made just for kids and one is made for more than just kids." The best example I can give is in the TV version, when the slightly cowardly brother Thal, whose name I can't remember, but I wish I'd written down, fails his jump on across the whatever it is, the gap, and with the great fall. In the TV series, he cuts his rope and falls to his death. In the film, he cuts his rope and falls conveniently to a place where they can pull him up from, so he doesn't die. In fact, in this story, I think the only one Thal obviously dies on screen, which is not the case in the TV series. Many Thals died in the making of this movie. No, sorry, don't know why I said that. So there's that as well. I like watching it. It's fun, but it's not as good as the TV version. Even though the TV version is twice as long, could probably have been cut down. It has been by the BBC to do a colour cut down version, which I really don't like. I think I mentioned this in my review of the Daleks, but I think I really need to reiterate how little I like that cut down version. It's been edited with a chainsaw. There's too much music, and the colour doesn't seem quite right to me. It just seems a little bit off. But I know there's a reason. I don't begrudge people who do like it, because I think it's a good selling point for getting somebody into watching classic Doctor who isn't going to be prepared to sit through 7 25-minute episodes of relatively slow TV. So if I was to give it a score, I haven't really been doing scores. If I was to give it a score out of 10, I would say 6 out of 10. Maybe 5 out of 10. I take points off because, as I said, there are things about it that I like. As I said, I like the scale of it, even though I think some of the scale of it doesn't quite work as well as the smaller scale TV series. I like the fact it's in colour. I think the Daleks are great, and the fact there's lots of them is very impressive. And actually, I think the fire extinguisher effect works very well. And they haven't got plungers from what they've got, little fork-like hooks, which again is an interesting design choice by the people that made it. It has the same problem as the Daleks, which is actually if you get long chunks of Daleks talking, it does get a bit. Oh god, can you just move on to the next bit? And some that can be cracked. I think it can be made better, but Dalek to Dalek conversations are never that interesting, I don't think, if they're long. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the Doctor Who and the Daleks. What you will have realised by now is that these are supposed to be off the cuff, straight after I've watched it, immediate thought reviews. So I'm going to miss stuff that some people will think is obvious. I'm going to focus on. I might go down massive rabbit holes on things that that other people don't care about. But I just want these to be. I think with all these as well, you've got to watch them yourself to make your own judgments. I think if you're gonna watch this, you're going to enjoy it. I don't think it's not boring. It's not. it's a bit childish, but then what's the point in being grown up if you can't be childish sometimes? Um, as somebody once said. I wonder who that was. Anyway, I'm at 15 minutes. I'm going to stop now. I don't have much else to say. Have a good day. The Marco Polo review is going to be slightly delayed because I've had a terrible day. But it won't. So it won't be tomorrow. It'll be Thursday. Um, I'm slightly struggling with just listening to the audio on its own. I've got so used to not doing that. But we'll get there. Have a good day, and I will speak to you all on Thursday. Unless I think of something else to add, which I'm sure the 3 or 4 people that are watching these videos will love. Anyway, have a good one. Bye bye.